Hi, this is Sergeant Beast Larson. Welcome to part 5 of CO Life, where I compare yard on this video, yard and recreation, prisons, and the county detention centers. County detention centers, different dorms, different pods, whatever you call them, tend to have their own small little isolated areas that they can play basketball or stretch, or guys go out and do their yoga. So it's very controlled and isolated. The dorm officer will push a button, door opens, they go out, just a couple at a time, especially now with the COVID going on. But a couple of them at a time can go out. You know, that's controlled, so there's not a lot out there. And, you know, throughout different times of the day, depending on their policy. So that's a lot more controlled. Also in the county setting and environment, it's a short-term stay. So their behavior is pretty much a best behavior to not lose this privilege while they're waiting to go to court and get released ultimately or get sentenced. So there are some altercations that can happen. You know, they can play buddy up, come up to you, hey CO, hey officer, can we go outside to the yard and, you know, act nice and everything. And they wait 5-10 minutes, play some ball, and then things go down. That is a possibility. So if you're that dorm officer, or if it's a little bit separate where you do have a little bit of a group out there, just be aware. Plan ahead. What if? I'm always talking things like reactionary gap. If you're outside with them, everybody's going to stay 4 to 6 feet away. If there's a group, they need to be farther away. You can hear them. Tell them to talk louder. No reason to have 15, 20 inmates, detainees, on a yard call come up to you and want to stand real close and ask you questions. One of them needs to talk, the other ones need to stay far away. So keep that in mind. Now in a prison, it varies between general population and the ISO seg units, our tier units, behavior units. For the GP units, the guys pretty much when they got to go to the gym or the outside yard, the big yard as we call it, and they had a small yard by each building. But they're privileged to go outside. They pretty much 99% put everything aside to have that ability to go outside. These guys argue and fuss. They owe each other money. They're selling food, gambling debts over the football games or basketball, baseball games. But if we say, hey, you know, the weather's great, we're going to be outside yard in about a half an hour, the fighting stops. The chance for them to be able to get outside and move freely in that big area, you know, size of a softball field area, is great. They can run, they play football, they get along so well. Even the football games, you know, play and touch football, gets a little tackle, they get along. It is dangerous for the officer or officers that are out there. We had recreational type officers that were a little bit different. Some of them were not certified correction officers. They were gym recreation administrator kinds of folks. Still, you put 50, 60 guys out there, it's like the Chow Hall video. You put a group out there, let them play ball, let them get worked up, push-ups, they're doing pull-ups. You tell them to stay off to the fence, you know, and this is why, because contraband. They get on the fence doing pull-ups, they're not really doing pull-ups, they're shaking loose the chain link so they can take it back, sharpen it for a weapon. So other than the obvious, they're playing ball, softball, football, whatever outside, and then they want to turn it to a big rumble, that tends to not happen. They're so grateful that it could be months before they go out, could be a month or 6 weeks before they go back a second time. So that becomes very important to them. You know, that's a good leverage tool, but be careful leveraging behavior in the inmates in a GP dorm. Be careful leveraging that, because that's one way to start a riot. That's not the first thing you want to take away. It's good to remind them and tell them, hey, we need good behavior. I need you to prove to my lieutenant, go out there and act right. You know, show them that you're acting right. Present it to them that way. Don't threaten them. The GP dorms also, when we didn't use big yard, we had what we call small yard. And now that was like much smaller, kind of like a backyard of a house. You know, basketball goal there, couldn't really do a whole lot. But they could get out and get some fresh air, some sunshine, get some breeze. Now here's the big concern. It's not really the fights. the purpose of them going to the yard is sharing information. They can yell, they can talk to the other dorms, talk to the other gang members. Maybe they'll try and pass something through. If you're walking down the sidewalk along the fence line, they'll violate that for a second. You tell them, hey, get away from the fence. They walk over, say something, and whatever's in their hand gets dropped and gets picked up. So you really have to watch for contraband, number one. And number two is trying to get weapons from the chain link, from the braces, from the bars that go up and down, the little silver, flat slats, all those things, great weapons. So that's the big concerns about yard, either way you go. Now the behavior unit lockdown, we called it Tier 1 and Tier 2. Tier 1 was just basically your 30-day ISO seg unit and then go back to the general population. These guys that would come, the inmates would cuff them in a cell, open the feed tray, cuff them, escort them out, 2-man escort out to the yard. Their small yard consisted of cages, kind of like an office here that's maybe 6 foot by 8 foot, 6 foot by 9 foot. So you're going to put the inmate in there, shut, secure the door. They'll turn around, put their hands out the little like feed tray area, rectangular like this. Take the cuffs off, then they have time. Now some of them are set up where it's just one fence in between, so they can talk and they can pass things through, or whatever through. They can fight through there, and they can have sexual relations through there. So you've got all these things you have to worry about. Some of the units were set up where they weren't right there together. There was enough gap that you couldn't reach your hand through. So, if they're trying to stick their wrists and hands through, it's only like this. Still potential to, to throw and pitch. Inmates in a prison are good at fishing. With a line, they get that underneath that door and they'll fish and flip it down several, 6-8 doors down the way. They'll get that line going across from upstairs up here all the way to upstairs over here. Somebody else throws a line and they hook it, pull it in, reel it in. These guys are masters of this. If they want to get contraband to somebody, they're going to get it to them. So keep that in mind. Just because you're there doesn't mean they won't. Just because you're there doesn't mean you can stop it. Because how do they do that? They distract the officer. This guy over here starts coughing, starts acting like he's all sick. The officer turns, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? They've already fished and done their business behind when you turn your head. Think about that. Eyes behind the head. One eye needs to look this way and one eye this way. We can't split our eyes, but that's what needs to happen in theory. Or you have two officers and you kind of stand back to back while you're watching them. Now our Tier 2, which was up to a 2-year program, was a little bit different. Of course, they were cuffed inside the cell. A lot of them were one-man cells. You bring them out, put them in there, put them in the cages. They were a little bit bigger. These guys constantly tearing the cages up, especially on the ceiling. Climb up, do pull-ups. Yeah, they're doing pull-ups all right. And the heavier they are, the better they are doing pull-ups, because then that breaks that chain link off the top. But they do, in that Tier 2 program, our biggest threat was them throwing urine and feces at us. And these guys, they'll drop their drawers, fill up a cup when you're not looking right out there, and wait for you to come by. They bring their little cup that they have of water, and it starts off water and it ends up feces mixed with water. The physical assault isn't that much problem. Now the Tier 1 guys, when as I was just talking, when their time's up to go back, however time out there, they pretty much will cuff up really quick and go back inside. Because again, it's that privilege to go out. They don't want to lose that. They don't want to get on the list and have the yard taken away. The guys in our Tier 2 program, doing up to 2 years in there, longer term, in that part of behavior problems, they really could care less if they get it taken away or not. They'll live for the moment today. They'll be crazy today. So that urine and feces thrown at you is your biggest risk. The second biggest risk is when it's time to say yard's over. And if they're out there, and usually you do it by dorm, they may go out and stay 3 or 4 hours. When it's time to bring them in, we would take 5 to 8 officers if you have them. Sometimes it was only 3 or 4. You make sure it's 2-man escort, never one-on-one, but 2 officers, 1 inmate, 2-on-1. And we try to do this, and it might take 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And these inmates would just strategize who's going to do it and what are they going to do. Or they're going to get 2 or 3, or they're going to refuse, they're refusing to come off. Then you got to go through your whole deal. You got to notify people and, shift OICs and unit managers, stuff like that. And then we play this game 30 minutes yelling, we're not coming in, and a whole bunch of them, or maybe 1 or 2. And you get down there and get to the point, they'll push your buttons. They'll play this game until you get to the point where you got a lieutenant down there and you got 4 guys suited up. Lieutenant's got the landline phone from inside the control booth. He's on the phone with somebody getting permission to use force. And you get there and you get lined up and they're like, okay, I give up. I'll go in. I'll turn around. They turn around and cuff up. We're going to play this game with you. The county level, they don't see anything like this. Very seldom do they see anything like this. The prison, whether they're doing life, it's just a game for that day. Then they'll go back in there and you lock them down in their cell. Hey, I'm sorry, Sarge. I didn't mean to do that. I had a bad day out there. Somebody hurt my feelings or whatever. I didn't get in my way. 101 excuses. You've heard them. But this is how a yard is out there. This is what you have to look forward to deal with. If you've had, we've had some use of force. We've had some crazy things. Let's see. The one more thing to mention out here when they're locked up in the fencing like this is the potential for suicide. Now I'm going to do a different video and cover suicides later, but they'll sheet strips, different things they'll secure and hide in their jumpsuits, come out and want to try and hang. That's pretty much it, hang and cut. So keep that in mind too while you're dealing with this yard in a prison. Contraband, urine and feces out through the screen to you, and the suicide risk. So think about all those. Enjoy yard call. Like and share. Don't forget to hit the red button.